So we are on our third session in Mesilat Yesharim. We are on chapter 3. So we talked about, just to remember, in the first chapter he tells us what's the purpose of human life. What is the purpose of human life? Pleasure in serving God, not pleasure and serving God.
No, I said in.
Yeah, but the in has to be emphasized. Otherwise, I worry. It's in that there's this. The pleasure is in connecting to Hashem. And why so? In order to connect to Hashem, you have to get to reach higher and higher levels of perfection or completeness. Okay, shlemut, completeness, adding more and more refinement and bettering of our moral characteristics. Then he talks about, the Ramchal talks about, how do we do this? How do we proceed? So he says the first thing you need to do is to develop an awareness of what you're doing. You have to evaluate your behaviors so to see that you're not doing things that are inappropriate. And this is in the section that we are in. He says first you have to, in order to do this, to develop this carefulness, this ability, this sense of making sure that we do the right thing, we have to be aware of what is the ultimate good and what is really bad. And he talked about looking in also at our, when we do an act, to evaluate, did we do the best the way that we did? For example, if you go back to your dorm and you all have roommates and you were supposed to clean the floors, and you did, and you picked it up, and this, ask yourself, did I do the best that I could? Could I do a better job with that? Could I really tidy up and sweep under the beds and lift the stuff up? And the answer is, maybe I didn't. The reason I'm telling you this is because tonight is my job is to sweep and to wash the floors in the house. So that's what I have to do. So I'm already thinking, like last week I sort of slacked. This time I better sort of step up. But I had the excuse, the bucket broke. No. But that's the idea, that even when you do a good act, when you do a positive thing that try to figure out, is there something that I could do to make what I did even better? Can I add a little bit more spice? Can I add a little bit more? Can I do it with a smile? As opposed to, you want me to sweep? Right? Because sometimes that's how I feel like I'm doing. I'm not really happy about it. And he says the person who doesn't do this and isn't doing, it's called the cheshbon, doesn't do the accounting of his actions and of his habits, he says essentially is walking in darkness. And he says the following. He says, "Ki hine choshech halayla shnei minei ta'uyot efshar lo sheigrom le'en ha'adam." Darkness and night cause two mistakes for our eyes to make. That is, our eyes make two types of mistakes. The first is that it covers his eyes so that you can't see what's in front of you. Right? In the dark, it's very hard to see what's in front of you. Can't see it. And so you are going to trip and fall. You have to be very, very careful. So that's one thing. Or the second mistake, is that it would show you something that either isn't there or that you're looking at one thing and you think it's something else. For example, as my bus driver friend said to me, that at night when he drove, he was very worried that to miss, because he was the last bus, he didn't want to miss anybody who was waiting for a bus. And since he was so careful, he kept stopping for light poles. Because it looked like he was, as he's driving, is that a guy? Is that someone's shoe? So he would stop. It's like, oh, it's a stupid light pole. All right, oh, that's a trash can. Because at night, you don't see very clearly. So either the darkness impedes our ability to see and we don't see at all, or that it causes us to make a mistake and think that something's there even though it's not. So how does that apply to what we're talking about? So he says the following. It doesn't, the darkness, this world, the world of physicality doesn't allow him to see all the obstacles that this world places before him. And then we see that that people who live their life, they keep falling and tripping. All sorts of things happen to them that you kind of say, shouldn't you change the way you live? Shouldn't you do something different? Shouldn't you improve? Look at what you're doing. You keep falling. And the other, which is probably, I would say, worse, והטעות השני, שהוא קשה מן הראשון, he actually says it, so I don't have to say it's me. Ramchal says it's worse. שמטעה ראייתם עד שרואים הרע כאילו הוא ממש טוב. That the physical world, once we live in it, the physicality causes us to believe that what is bad for us is actually good for us. That we enjoy certain things, like, for example, Coke. Is it healthy for you? In moderation, right? Which kind? Which kind of Coke is good for you?
It's not good for you.
They're all bad.
They're all bad. Right? All sodas. Right? If you drink Coca-Cola, it's not healthy for you. It's not healthy for you. So we tend to say that what makes us body feel good is good for us. That's what happens in the physical world. If it feels good, then do it. Have you ever heard that? That's a big problem. Because remember what the Ramchal said. This is building to get what I said. That there's a seesaw. The more we build our spirituality, the weaker the body gets. The more we build our body, the spirituality weakens. If we seek physical pleasures, then it affects us. The body is built to seek pleasures. And the soul is supposed to do what to those pleasures?
It's supposed to use the physical to enhance the spiritual.
That's right. So that's what you meant. That's from your example. Okay. I think that is very good. So that when we make a bracha on a drink or on a piece of food, we are essentially saying, I need to eat because I need to keep my bodily strength. But on the other hand, I recognize that what I have is God's and I need His permission. And I connect what the physicality that I'm going to do to connect it to God. Therefore, I'm doing sort of both. But the soul is the one that is moving and taking care of the body. But in darkness, the physicality, the physical world, we can get to a level where what we think is bad is really the good. And what we think is really good is really terrible for us. Why? Because we forgot what the ultimate goal of our life is. And what is the ultimate goal? To connect to Hashem, right? That's the idea. That is the ultimate pleasure. And if somebody says, but I don't feel it, when I come to class and listen to a rabbi talk about the Rabbi Ishmael, the Rava, and to Ravashi, I don't get it. What do they want? Why are they arguing? Why are they yelling at one another? That shows us how a person is really far in the dark. And the question is, which is what the Ramchal is going to talk about in the next chapter, how do you get to the level where you start being aware that your moral characteristics and your desires are off base? They're off base because of the physicality. And that really is the challenge on all of us. All of us have to figure out how can we truly meet the goals for why we're here. If the goal is for ultimate pleasure, it means that the longer we are here, we should have a greater ability to have physical pleasures. But guess what? What happens when you get older? Do you have more ability to enjoy this world or less?
Less.
Why? If that's the ultimate goal.
You have less. You have less.
But why? But I'm saying, remember, listen to what I'm saying. If the ultimate goal of a human being's life is physical pleasure, then it serves to reason, right? It's safe to assume that the longer you are here, then your ability to pursue and have these pleasures should grow. Yet what happens, as you said, is just the opposite. The older somebody gets, the less and less pleasures they can have. Why?
Then it stands to reason that's not the reason we're here.
It stands to reason we're not here for that. That's what I think. That's what the Ramchalim say. So he says something very interesting, that once a person believes that the goal of the physicality of this world is to enjoy oneself and have a good time and have physical pleasures, when you try to point out to him that, hey, that's not the purpose we're here, they don't want to hear it. Why? Because the physical world is darkness. It causes them to believe what is right is wrong, and what is wrong is right. Their intellect is skewing the information, the data that is coming before them, because it's in the dark. With me?
If the logic is that when your ability to enjoy physical pleasure fades as you get older, wouldn't it be more logical to say then, all right, the purpose of life is when you're younger, enjoy all the physical pleasures and go crazy, and when you get older, relax and study God. You have the ability to do this.
Relax and what? And suffer.
Why suffer?
Well, then what do you do? Most people, when they get older, there's lots of physical ailments that cause them to have difficulties.
Studying Torah doesn't necessarily change that, though.
Correct. But the point is that the whole point of the physicality that is going to... Did you want to say something?
Acting like Torah does, though. Studying Torah, of course not. Acting like Torah.
What do you mean?
Being careful of your physical pleasures. It's going to save your life. Otherwise, all these chemicals that you're going to be around in like taking in the physical pleasures are all bad for you unless used properly. I heard this thing. I don't know how correct it is.
Yeah.
That there was a rabbi who smoked cigarettes until he was 115.
Rav Kaduri.
Yeah. And he said that he lived to 115.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's something different there about. So he said that the reason why he smoked cigarettes is because he was fighting Asa, fighting the evil and anger inside of him, and because he was smoking for a positive reason,
It didn't affect him.
less, or didn't affect.
Okay, but that could also just be an anomaly. The oldest man to ever run a marathon was a 103-year-old chain smoker. It may be off on 103, but 100-something-year-old chain smoker. Anomalies happen. Doesn't change the fact that you can study Torah a lot, and if you smoke cigarettes, it's still going to be bad for you. Studying Torah doesn't say you can't drink Coca-Cola, which we just established is also bad for you.
We didn't establish, just for the home audience. We don't want to get sued by Coca-Cola.
Fair enough.
We're not established. We're just talking, right? You never know where this thing is going to
Coca-Cola
go.
might be bad for you. Coca-Cola might be bad for you then.
I just saw...
And if it is bad for you, Torah's not... You can spiritually uplift it, but Torah's not going to change the chemicals you're putting in your body, I don't think.
Okay.
You don't think?
Torah's going to make you not
I'm
consume
not
them.
going to know anything.
Did you hear what Yoni said?
Yes, no.
Torah's going to make you not consume them in the first place.
You don't need the hype.
That's the point. That's the point. That you don't need the hype. You don't need that because you're not seeking that pleasure.
It's all a want. And you
Right.
don't need wants.
Right.
You want wants.
Correct. If you are aware of what if you are aware that your body, when it's requesting something, this is a want and not a need, then you have a different mahalach, different way of living your life. Yeah, Yoni.
So if I have trouble battling my HR, I could take up smoking cigarettes.
Only if you're mukubal on 115.
No, I'm serious though.
I'm serious. You want a header for smoking? Didn't you? You were with us when we were speaking to Rav Reisman, who said about smoking that people who smoke are crazy.
But did you not hear the story?
I said that's for 115, somebody who studies Kabbalah for all his life. So if you're 115 and studying Kabbalah all his life, I guess you could. I mean, if you're telling me that today you're committed to that, then I guess we can, go to a posek and find you a heter. But since you're not willing to do that, because, then,
I don't enjoy smoking. That's the thing.
then don't smoke. If you don't enjoy it, then certainly you shouldn't do it. Then what's the reason to be?
It's not that simple.
It's not that simple. You know what?
You can not enjoy something and still been doing it for a long time, and it becomes
A habit.
a habit.
Okay. So are you stronger than the habit or weaker than the habit?
Right now, I'm weaker than the habit.
Then man up.
And I think
up.
I think just like if you're talking about physicality, and when you get older, relying on physicality to be your life, it becomes a habit.
Yeah,
and so
absolutely.
to learn the spirituality at that age becomes a difficulty.
I agree. Very nice, very nice. Okay, says the Ramchal, Achotam shekvar yatsu min ha'ma'asar hazeh, says this idea of the physicality is really like almost a prison. And they see the truth for what it is. Only they can advise other people how to get out. Only they can advise. And he says, what is this similar to? Legan ha-mevucha, hagan hanatua litzchok. He is talking about, what is it similar to? To a labyrinth. Do you know what a labyrinth is?
A maze.
A maze. Labyrinth is I love this word, it's a beautiful word. In Nebraska, there's in October, that's when there's the harvest season for corn. And they do a corn maze. And you go through a corn maze, and what's the idea of a corn maze? You're trying to go to the other side. And there's kids, and there's somebody stands on a ladder to make sure that nobody gets lost. And they tell the kids, no, go that way, no, go that way. And then every once in a while, somebody jumps, like, ooh, it scares them, for Halloween. The Ramchal is saying that is really our situation in the physical world. If you don't have someone to point you to where to go, you're essentially in a labyrinth. And you are living by trial and error. And when you're living by trial and error, what happens?
You make errors.
You make errors. You fall, and you trip, and you go backward, then you're stuck, and then you have to go back, and then all those sort of things. So he says, someone who is able to get out of this darkness is able to help the people get out of this labyrinth. And he says they are the ones that could teach people how to get out of this mess. Problem is, people don't want to hear it. So when somebody says, don't go, don't do this, don't do this, don't do it, and they do, then, it's kind of hard. People don't like saying, I told you so. But sometimes you kind of have to. Didn't I tell you not to do this? Yeah, well, I just thought it would work. It's a big problem. It's a big, big problem. Okay. So he says in the end of chapter 3, Kalalo shel davar. In the end, the conclusion, צריך האדם להיות מתבונן בשכלו תמיד, בכל זמן, that a person should use his intellect to always evaluate what he is doing. Don't be automatons. Don't live your life like a robot. Figure out what are you doing and why are you doing it. And he says that a person should set for himself time in the day where you can seclude yourself and do the cheshbon, do the accounting. What did I do today? What did I do yesterday? Did I use my time wisely? Did I behave in the best way that I could? That is the only way that you can rise and become a better person if you take the time each day to improve yourself. Right? If you wanted to do a split, right? And you don't practice, could you do a split?
No.
Why not? You could just try it. You could do it. You could probably get into it, but there's no way you're getting out. Right? You're like, oh, right? And you're stuck. And the same thing, if you don't practice it, you're not going to have the moral characteristics that you should want to have. I was talking to somebody who said that they want to get married. And he said, but I can't really go out with any girls because I'm not where I want to be. And whichever girl, I meet, I'm not at the level that she would want me. I said to him, maybe you should go on a date and ask for a girl to tell you what kind of man she's looking for. And maybe that'll give you what you ought to be. And then implement the plan to get there. Implement the plan to get there. If the people that you're interested in being with and what type of, figure it out. Create a plan. What kind of person do you want to be? Do you want to be the fun-loving kind of guy that goes surfing and listens to loud music when you're 60? A lot of people say no, not really. I mean, you listen to loud music because you can't really hear well, but it's not very loud. All right. So he says that a person should investigate his life and have some time every day to seclude himself. And what is he trying to figure out? מה הוא הדרך האמיתי לפי חוק התורה שהאדם צריך ללך בו? What is the true path that a person should follow according to the Torah? You have to know that. Otherwise, what are you doing? What are you evaluating? Because if a person doesn't have a baseline, we talked about this, if you don't have a baseline of what appropriate behavior is, what are you going to evaluate? How are you going to decide whether you behaved appropriately or not? Most people rarely fault themselves. Most people think they always do the right thing. I usually do. When somebody comes and complains, I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. All I said was this. Yeah, and it hurt my feelings. How could that hurt your feelings? How could it be? I'm such a nice guy. No, you're not. You hurt me. How did? Then I say, I didn't hurt you. You hurt yourself. Right? It's hard for us to look at ourselves and say that we did something wrong. But if you have the Torah, either you followed what the Torah said or you don't. And be honest. Here's the plumb line. Here's what you need to live by. Did you do it? Did you give tzedakah? Did you do it? Are you happy when you see a Jew? Are you happy when you see them? Do you treat them the way that you want to be treated? Then if so, then yes. Then comes somebody who says, wait a minute, I don't mind being treated badly. And you don't really love yourself.